And good morning. Welcome back to our Catching Carp Outdoors segment here on the Area Sports Roundup as we check in with our local fishing expert, guide Matt Larson. Good day to you, sir.
Hey, good morning, Joel. How are you this morning?
Doing very well, and boy, it's hot. I mean, so it's been for those of us that like to be outside, whether it's for sports or for fishing or for your job. It's been warm, but it's been a good time to get outdoors, I would guess.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, we've been out quite a bit, and trying to beat the heat, and there's all kinds of ways around that. But no, it's been great to be out.
Well, maybe I'll start off there with the heat, because when you're on a lake, you're fishing. Obviously, the heat affects us, the person who is on. So you got to take care of yourself, get the fluids and all that stuff in there. But how about the fish? What does a heat wave like this do for fishing around Minnesota?
Well, a heat wave like this is it depends on how quickly the water warms, and that can change from lake to lake to lake. Obviously, something that's more tannic and stained, a chocolate milk colored lake, is going to warm up a lot faster than a clear lake. So in certain cases, that's a per lake basis. But what it can do is it can slow or speed up their metabolism. Certain lakes, it's a great thing. You get the wind blowing and all the factors line up, and when the stars align like that, man, you can get a really great walleye bite going. But it also on a lake that's very warm, 70 plus degrees, they can slow down the metabolism, and they're not willing to do much of anything, and they're not chasing. So, you're going to have to go with more of a reaction style approach versus something that's a little bit more finesse, and you can guarantee yourself more hookups.
And you talked a little bit about what if you're going to go to, because I know in this Hutchinson area there's a lot of shallow lakes here that I would guess warm up pretty quick in a heat wave like this. How would you go out and fish this local area in the heat?
Well, I'd try to beat the heat by probably fishing along the weed edges, and you're going to have to probably look for the cover. Wherever the densest cover is with these high skies, you're going to want to fish those edges, or you're going to have to get out and probably push the edges of the thermocline. So you're going to have to get up the steeper edges of some of these breaks. But on the shallow lakes, you're probably going to be more in relation to the weed lines, or if you can find pockets, pockets in the milfoil where maybe you can pitch in, and hopefully there's something edged up in there. That'd be a good approach right now with the way the conditions are and what we're facing right now.
Now, I know for me, one of my favorite lakes around the area, because I love to fish northerns. That's why I grew up fishing for northern pike. Lake Jenny is wonderful for northern pike in the area here. But usually at this time of year, the weeds get denser and they get higher. And is it still good to fish a lake like that, or how do you fish a more denser, weedy lake like a Lake Jenny?
I would probably go with more of a weedless approach then. A Tokyo rig for a lake like Lake Jenny, what I can do with a Tokyo rig is I can put an extremely heavy bullet weight on the end of that Tokyo, and then I can put some kind of a paddle shad on there, something that I can rip through, but then I can rig that whole thing weedless. And believe it or not, I can actually troll that through. So I can take a 5-inch paddle shad, put that on like maybe a 3/0 hook, Tokyo rig setup, and I'm able to work through some of those problems with these heavier, denser mats on the surfaces of some of these shallower lakes. So with that 5-inch paddle shad, I can rip that through there, and I'm efficiently still working the areas that I want to work, but I don't have to sit there and continuously take brush off of my setup.
That from experience, that can be not fun to get your line in and have a bunch of salad on the end of your hook.
Another way to beat that too, in addition, Joel, is so on that Tokyo setup. Sometimes I'll even put a bobber on the forefront of that. Maybe I'll put that 8 feet in front of that Tokyo bait, and the reason for that, putting a bigger bobber on there, is not only does that'll attract all the weeds that inevitably would be getting to my bait, and so you're kind of plowing your way through some of those mats, but it actually keeps that bait up. So when you're trying to punch in there, it's not punching in towards the bottom. You're keeping that profile up towards the top, able to kind of maybe see if you can get some of those reaction bites that you're looking for using something like that.
Sounds like a good plan. As long as we're on northern pike, we'll stay on that. What's working right now overall, or is there best lakes, or tell us how to fish for some northern pike.
Right now, I'd be probably pulling either a Rapala, or like I said, I'd be fishing like a paddle shad on a bigger weighted Tokyo rig, or even just a Texas, and I could pull that along. And I probably would be moving somewhere between 1.5 and 2 miles an hour for northerns right now. You really want to get up and get going so that you can find the most aggressive fish, and sometimes those fish are going to be the biggest fish in the system. So and then lakes for that, Jenny's one that I like in particular, but I also like Erie, and I like Bell, and I like Greenleaf, and I like Ripley. Ripley can be good for some bigger pike, and there's some good sized pike up on Big Swan as well.
We'll stay in the northern pike family. Their cousins. Once the heat comes out, the muskie season opens up here, and I know there's not a lot of lakes around the area. You got to kind of go around Minnesota a little bit to find some muskies, but those can be fun if you do catch on to one.
Yeah, muskies are heating up right now. Obviously, it's still early in the season for that. If I'm fishing around, Waconia is going to be a good spot to go get some action. Conca is always a good spot. But if you're heading north, Mille Lacs is always a fun fish, and then the Alexandria area has plenty of opportunities as well.
How about for the walleyes now? Because that's what most people are going out for. If you're in Minnesota, you're probably fishing for walleyes or bass at this point. Tell us about the walleye bite right now.
Well, there's 2 walleye bites going on. There's a definite weed bite going on, and I know that from experience just all over the state, and who I've talked to and where I've kind of been and what I've been doing. So there's a definite weed walleye bite, and that's going to be somewhere between 8 and 13 feet. Sometimes they're on the inside weed, so that's where they're 8. Sometimes they're on that outside edge, so it's 13, 14, 15. But there's definitely a good weed walleye bite going on. And then there's an edge bite going. I'd say like 24 plus feet. You're going to find some of the bigger girls, hiding out, but they're definitely on the chew, putting some pounds back on after spawn. And some of the bigger fish that you are getting, you can tell it's still post spawn. They're not fully put that feed bag back on, so they're eating and they're taking some bigger baits.
No, if you're on, and this kind of backs up a little bit and this is for all species of fish, if you go to a lake and let's say you're trying everything, you're trying this, you're trying that, how often should you change baits, change lures, change locations, change lakes? I mean, how long do you give your certain spot?
Well, 20% of the lake is going to hold 100% of the fish, in my experience. You can eliminate a lot of water just by kind of figuring out where that happy depth is. And so once you kind of figure that out, let's just say it's 18 feet. Then what I like to do is it's process of elimination. On high sky days, I'm going to eliminate a lot of bright colors. If it's a clear lake, I'm probably going to go to my gold, silvers, maybe even a black if that profile calls for it. If you're dealing with some stained water, then maybe even on a sunny day, I'll try to go to a profile maybe like an orange or a pink. But that's all in relation to those factors. And so I work through a progression of colors, and I'll give one spot a progression of colors and tactics. I'll start very subtle and see if I can get them to bite that way. But if I have to crank it up, then I'll increase my action, try to trigger them, so maybe you're coming in there and you're using a 16th ounce jig on a leech, and you're just going to pitch that along the weed edges first, and then maybe it goes all the way to, okay, now I'm using a snap jig or a Tokyo rig, and I'm punching on that into the weeds a little bit, into that edge, and I'm ripping that out. Well, there's the stratification of progression. Very subtle and finesse with the leech, but you're all the way up to snapping it into the weeds and out of the weeds to try to trigger a reaction strike. So work through the colors, work through the progression of finesse to erratic.
how much can doing your homework help with that? Because you can get fishing reports. You can there's a lot of different apps that say, hey, I caught this fish on this lake and this feet of water with this bait. Yeah, how much can doing your homework help with something like that?
Yeah, doing your homework maybe more consists of looking at the day more so than anything. A report is nice. A fishing report is definitely nice to give you a basis, but keep in mind that's also what's happened. It's not what's happening. So when you're, even like as we're talking now, things are changing, and so what I'm talking about now might be different in a couple days. And so a report is something that I would just use as a base. I wouldn't bank off of it. It's more or less look at the day, look at the conditions, read your phone and what it's telling you as far as where's the barometric pressure's at, where the wind's coming, what's the wind going to do over the course of 4 or 5, 6 hours. That's going to be more helpful for you in terms of how your day is going to get set up.
Speaking of what's happening in the future, as because it's already, it's only June and we're under this heat wave that we're going through. So it may only be a warmer summer. Temps will warm up. How do you see fishing changing here in the next few weeks? What tactics should folks move to or move away from?
I think that you're going to be dealing with increased oxygen levels at certain variants of the water column. So you're going to see some fish push out to that thermocline. You're going to see fish go real deep if we continue on this pattern with this heat wave. But fish will also stay in the most oxygenated part of the lake. So with all this in sunlight, you're just increasing the weeds, and there's going to be a lot of oxygen in those weeds, and then there's going to be a lot of activity in those weeds. So again, it's the same thing that I was talking about with the bite right now, where you got a definitely good bite going on in the weeds, but you also have fish that are pushing off the break and they're moving out to the thermocline. That's going to depend on the lake. Deeper lakes like Erie, Stella, Manuela, Minnabell, those lakes are probably going to have those fish relate more to the thermoclines. And lakes like Jenny, Washington, Ripley that are shallower, you're going to see some of those lakes. Those are going to probably be more weed oriented. So the fish will bury into the weeds a little bit more.
Favorite species to go for here in the summer, or is there a certain one that bites a little better in the heat?
Panfish will always bite in the heat. We've been rocking the panfish lately in this heat, and that's a good way to beat the heat too, because you can go get your box pretty quick and get off the water. But the walleyes will come around, and there's always ways to beat the walleyes in the heat. Start pulling crankbait, spinners. Matching the hatch, doing those kind of things. That's a good way to stay productive. And the bass will always bite in the heat too. Once their metabolism catches up, they'll start biting. Get off their beds, they'll bite. They'll bite all summer.
You mentioned the panfish and the bass. If I forgot to mention those, give us some lakes to go to in the area for the panfish and the bass if folks are looking for those.
So if you want some bass, Sioux and Greenleaf, that's always a good place to start. I do like Willie, Minnabell, Manuela, Bell, Jenny, all the way down the line. Collinwood's good. Washington's been kicking out some horses. I've been seeing some tournament guys up there do real well, putting together some 4.5, 5-pound bags. So those would be my twos. And then panfish, there's been some fish biting on Bell. There's been some panfish biting on Minnabell, and there's been some panfish biting on Washington.
Sounds good, Matt. Hey, if folks would like to talk with you, maybe have you take them out fishing, how can folks get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me on my cell phone, 320-583-9706.
Sounds good, Matt. We'll talk again.
All right. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt Larson, fishing guide and host. And this is the Catching Carp Outdoors segment here on the ASR.
Catchin' Carp Outdoors has been a presentation of KDUZ, KARP, KGLB Radio, and the Ingstad, Minnesota Radio Network. Check out all our past episodes on YouTube.